Well, good morning and welcome to today's edition of the Wisdom of the Soul class. I'm Michael Benner, but I bet you knew that. And our class today is going to be about karma. And I think most of us, even though we live in the West, are familiar with the concept. It's part of our pop culture. But we'll dig in a little deeper today and discuss the principle of karma or the law of karma as cause and effect, and further, as a cycle. Karma, like everything else, is a cycle. Maybe it's just me, but lots of times, due to the tendency that we all have, I think, to think in binary terms, either or, all or nothing, all differences are opposites. You're either with us or against us. You know, the basic subject object split, good guys and bad guys. So we sort of lay everything on that line. Our politics and just everything, left or right, um, conservative or progressive. And so cause and effect, we lay that on the line, just like a timeline, you know, the past are all those negative numbers to the left of zero, and the future are all these positive numbers that roll out to the right of zero. A horrible model, just a horrible model. And it would benefit us to consider why clocks are round. Why do we make a clock round? Because time goes round and round. It's a measure of the planet spinning around and around as it spins around the sun, and the sun and the solar system slowly revolve around the galaxy, which revolves in a cluster of galaxies, and on and on and on. That's what energy does. It cycles, it spins, it rotates. Look at a weather map. The high pressure, low pressure, they're giant weather systems that spin. the the wind under the wings of a bird or an airplane, for that matter, is spinning. That's where the lift comes from. Or the wake off the back of a boat. Everything spins, everything cycles, everything goes round and round. And so it is with karma. And we'll talk about that today. Cause and effect as a cycle. And I think in the newsletter, I used the title, It's All Good. Karma, It's All Good. So we'll also take a look at what we mean by bad karma, and is there is there really such a thing as bad karma? Maybe we shouldn't judge karma as good or bad either. What if it were all good? And it's also not a system of reward and punishment. So we'll talk about that too. So let's do our opening meditation. If you get comfortable in your chairs, get ready to do 10 or 12 minutes of meditation here. Close your eyes and just bring your awareness into how it feels to be in your body, supported by the chair. And the chair is supported by the floor. Remind yourself that because you're supported by the chair and the floor, that you can let go. Some of us hold on in our bodies as if we're afraid they're going to fly off into parts and pieces. If you're aware of that, or as you become aware of that holding on, let it go. Just feel muscles relaxing and unwinding. And complement that with a couple of slow, deep breaths, inhaling slowly through your nose, big, slow, deep breaths, pulling in power. And after a brief pause, exhale just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, and feel the letting go. Do that a couple more times. Pulling in strength and power as you inhale, and create a letting go feeling as you exhale. And after 2 or 3 of those, allow your breathing to return to normal. But continue to feel a letting go process. Scan your body slowly, sweeping from one end to the other, as if scanning, letting go of any muscular tension, any stresses or anxieties that you become aware of. Just to see what happens when you let go. Letting go is more than a physical release of muscular tension. There's also a mental and emotional letting go. Letting go of the drumbeat of thoughts that seem to demand your attention and insist they are so important that you can't stop thinking for even a minute. Reassure that part of you that it's okay to let go of the demand that you pay attention to the thoughts. Let them come and go without paying attention. That's the phrase, right? Paying attention to them. You don't need to suppress the thought, just adopt an attitude that it's not really that important, nothing that can't wait. And the emotional nature, too, there's letting go there. Letting go of any, again, anxiety or stress, but any hurtful feeling, any emptiness, any longing that you have for things to be other than they are, your desire nature. We'll let it go. Most of us throughout our day, even on a Sunday morning here, Sunday afternoon, perhaps where you are, even Sunday evening for some of you. But it's a day off. Just let go. And notice that you remain. It's about feeling safe and relaxed. Responding to the anxieties and stresses of our daily life and affairs, purposefully and deliberately responding by reminding yourself that you are safe. And that the more relaxed we become, the more aware we become. Expanded awareness, higher consciousness, is an elevated perspective, a bigger picture, more complete, a gestalt, a grand context in which we begin to see our connections to all things. For everything touches everything. Every seemingly separated thing is part of one thing, but to see it, to feel it, to experience it, and be aware of the unity beyond the veil, we have to relax and feel safe. To allow our consciousness to rise, our awareness to expand, to begin to see what we have not seen, and experience the richness around us that we often ignore or just miss. What if you just took 10 or 12 minutes once a day, every day, ideally early in the day, to begin your day by feeling this safe and relaxed, this open and receptive? And ponder that for a moment. How does it feel to be open and receptive, to be so safe? That's expanded awareness. Imagine a gentle precipitation downward, like a gentle rainfall, an impress from above of awareness. Awareness is the ground of being, the energy that illumines and animates us. And it contains thoughts, thoughts that arise full blown, all by themselves. It's like a wave would rise up out of the ocean, travel a bit, and then exhaust itself, collapsing on a beach somewhere. So too our thoughts rise, live for a time, and having exhausted themselves, our thought stream collapses, only to be replaced by another. I'm distinguishing the rising and falling of these spontaneous thoughts from task-related thinking, from purposeful and deliberate applications of deductive logic to problem solving and decision making, to reading and writing, to conversation, to balancing your checkbook or making a to-do list or a shopping list at the store. There are those deliberate, purposeful task-related thoughts, but then there are the ones that just rise up on their own. Emotions in the same way. There are those emotions that seem clearly related to an event or a circumstance, a happenstance. Well, look what just happened. That's why I feel this way. But there are also the moods and the attitudes and the background feelings that rise up on their own for no particular reason. Some days you're happy for really no reason at all, while other times you find yourself in a bit of a funk, maybe a little depressed or melancholy, and not sure why, just sort of bummed out. You try to put your finger on a cause or a reason for it, but it escapes you. Consider that it just rose up on its own for no reason. And then consider the events in our lives, the things that we, given the way we talk, the language that we use, we might say, the things that happen to us. Guess what just happened to me? As opposed to guess what just happened. We personalize it. It's almost arrogant. Let's pick up on this. We touched on it last week. You can watch a sunset or a deer in the meadow. For the calming that it has on us, for the beauty, for the peace. And we know it happened, but it didn't really happen to us. We wouldn't say it that way. Guess what happened to me? I watched the sunset. Or the ball game we talked about last week, too. I went to the ballpark, baseball, football stadium, basketball. Got all excited and enthused. Great game. It happened, but it didn't really happen to you. Guess what happened to me? The Lakers won. It didn't really happen to you. If you're stuck in traffic, though, now we start really making it personal. Something that happened. Gridlock traffic. Why do you say it happened to me? Why take that so? You're surrounded by people that are having the same understandably frustrating experience, but it didn't happen to you. It just happened. You got in the way. Somebody's upset and they trigger you. It brings up old unresolved hurt and confusion. Boy, that feels really personal. This clearly happened to me. It was directed at me. I feel like a target, an effect of what just happened. Well, consider maybe that too just happened. And how it impacts you. Well, what you make of that or the meaning that comes out of it, that's really completely up to you. Not the perpetrator, or not the stimulus. We have a tendency to use all thought and all feeling to understand the world around us. We've been educated to do that. That's what school is. Know this, know that, know everything except know the self. So there are healthy ways to understand the self, and then there are unhealthy ways that we view ourselves as victims. And today we'll talk about karma, the rising and falling of all things, the ebb and flow, like the weather, of all things. And as we watch them without judgment in the present moment, we're much more likely to see them as simply happening rather than happening to us. Ouch, that hurt. There's extraordinary power in watching, experiencing, without judgment, just watch it happen. The more we judge, the less we see, the less we understand, the less we experience. On the other hand, the more we are able to suspend judgment, the more we see, the more we understand, the easier it is to embrace all things, not as good or bad, but simply as life rising and falling, like the wave, like the cloud that passes. Be the witness, be the observer, devote yourself to slowing down just a little bit, opening your eyes, and being mindful, noticing what you notice, being the one who notices in a safe and relaxed way. Set your attitude straight before we come back to the wide awake state. Think of your day as being wonderful, rich, full of opportunity. Do something nice for yourself today. Treat yourself as if you were someone you really cared about, someone you really loved. Do something nice for yourself. Treat yourself as if you are a treasure to others. Say to yourself every day in every way, I'm getting better and better and better. Every day in every way, better and better. Just because I hold that intention. And I get better and better every day in every way. To increase my ability to help other people in their getting better. To support them. Sometimes just to listen. Sometimes just to be there for them and say, I understand. You know, may not occur to us very often, but we don't need to agree with people to tell them that we understand how they feel. Positive feelings, warm, safe attitude that you bring with you back to the waking state. And just count yourself out 1 to 3. Silently say to yourself, 1 is forming the intention to return to wide awake. 2 is a sense of floating up or waking up or drifting upward toward the waking state. 3 is eyes open, wide awake, back in the room. Take a big breath, big deep breath. And maybe a little stretch. I always like to stretch after a meditation. Back in the room. Feeling fine, rested, refreshed, wide awake, alert. Back in the room better than before. Good. When we talk about karma, when we talk about conditions rising and falling, we're really at the heart of the matter. Of both personal development and transpersonal or spiritual development. I've made the argument in these classes and will continue to persist in my strong feeling that without emotional intelligence, without learning to manage our emotions, to understand them, and to manage is really a good word. I'm a little uncomfortable with saying control your emotions. It sounds a little like repression. To explore our emotional feelings. I think this is the reason so many people aspire to spiritual development and growth, but don't get very far. Because so many spiritual traditions, particularly organized religion, for all that it has to offer, overlooks the need to tame the beast. We are, after all, in animal bodies. And much of our behavior is animal-like and needs to be refined. And unless and until we begin to work with our heartache, our upset, our frustration, our anger, our envy and jealousy, our loneliness, our sense of alienation, get a better understanding of what the unconscious mind is trying to communicate to us through these feelings. I have a feeling. The Beatle tune. I got a feeling. We talk about this, but not often deeply. What do you mean you've got a feeling? Well, I just sort of feel like it's a non-logical process. A couple of months ago, we did several weeks, 2 or 3 classes on the differences between thoughts and feelings. You could always go back and review that in the YouTube channel or the podcast. Both searchable as the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. You'll find the YouTube channel and the audio podcast as well. And review the distinctions between thoughts and feelings. To understand our feelings is just essential to spiritual growth. And so we've done a bit of that. We'll continue to do a bit of that. But I bring it up now because of the way our feelings rise and fall. And again, a lot of it is hooked to a particular circumstance or happenstance or some event that occurs. And so that's why I feel the way I do. The loss of the Queen is curious because of what she represents. And I don't suppose any of us have ever met the Queen. I've been to England on a couple of occasions and looked at the palaces and toured Windsor, enjoyed it, had mixed feelings about it. I've always had mixed feelings about the monarchy. But with the death of the Queen this week, I think we're getting a sense of the importance of tradition and just sort of the way in which the monarchy, although it doesn't really have any power in England, is a backbone. Tradition is a scaffolding or a structure upon which the society is built. I interviewed a great anti war activist, a medical doctor from Australia named Dr. Helen Caldicott on several occasions in the 80s. And she said to me once, America would be better off with royalty. And I said, why? Why would you say that? Why would we want a royal family in America, in the United States? She said, well, then you'd have someone to love unconditionally and you'd be harder on your politicians. This was long before um, these personality cults emerged. And nobody seems to talk about what's going to happen to the whole MAGA movement in America when this ex-president 45 passes over. But it's such a personality cult, it's going to be a major shift. So you had feelings in learning about the death of the Queen, even though everybody knew she's what, 96 or something, and her mother lived to 103, and her husband just died a few months ago. He was in his 90s. Good genes in that family, I guess. Good doctors, good food. They're doing something right. So, whatever feelings those brought up for you, they rose spontaneously. Um, Although in this case, here's an event, here's a circumstance. And still the feelings rose. Today's 9/11. 9/11. It's hard to believe. What would it have been 21 years ago? Those airplanes flew into those towers, and one of them ended up in a field in Pennsylvania. Very strong feelings around that event. But the event was, as they say, 21 years ago, and yet just me mentioning it will bring up feelings, emotional feelings, as well as thoughts. But they rise up, don't you see? Many of them connected to an event, but many of our thoughts and our feelings are not connected at all. They rise on their own. It's as if that old saying about we only use 10% of our brain, or we're only 10% conscious, and even then on a good day. There's this huge unconscious mind, like the 90% of the iceberg that's submerged that you don't see, that is generating these thoughts and feelings that bring them up. And so we wonder, why do I feel this way? Why is this happening to me? And this is where we begin to talk about karma. Now, I said this a few minutes ago. I'm going to repeat it. Karma is not a system of reward and punishment. We need to look very carefully at our use of the phrase good karma or bad karma. It makes sense in a real simplistic way to say that there may be good karma, better karma, worse karma. Bummer, this is bad karma. But when I suggested in the newsletter this week, karma, it's all good, it is. In that this is a principle, this is a fundamental foundational principle, a law of the universe, like gravity, or electromagnetism, or thermodynamics. It's just a law, it's a principle, it's the way things work. This is widely believed in the East. It's fundamental to Vedantism, which is more cultural than religious, sort of the philosophy of India, Hindustan, that part of the world. The Brahmanism and Hinduism that came out of that, based on karma. Buddhism, which spun out of Hinduism. Karma is a fundamental belief in Buddhism. Taoism, which is similar to Buddhism in many ways, yet uniquely Chinese. Taoism from Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching. Karma is in Taoism as well. Confucianism, also Chinese, hints at it, at the very least. Jainism, Sikhism. Who am I leaving out? A few others. All. This is not debatable in the East, and again, as these philosophies have been better known in the West through teachers like Alan Watts or Gary Snyder or the other books that in the 1950s with the Beat Generation and the hippies in the 60s, many of them, especially when psychedelics became popular, many people turned to Eastern philosophy and sort of discovered this whole concept of karma. Karma is cause and effect, and it is a cycle. It goes around and around. It's like a daisy chain in that any particular event or circumstance, an event or circumstance, a condition, as it's more commonly called, just a condition, is an effect or a result of some previous cause. Things happen for a reason. And so behind the rising and falling of happenstance and situation and circumstance, there is some reason, some cause, even if you don't know what it is. Things don't just happen. There are reasons why things happen. They have causes. Well, that cause of this effect may be an effect of a previous cause. So while it cycles round and round, you can sort of daisy chain your way back. Let's see if I can give you an example of cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. I don't know, 16, 18, maybe 20 years ago, there was an enormous tsunami that killed hundreds of thousands. I don't know if you remember this, but something like 250,000 people, hundreds of thousands of people were killed in the Middle East and all through Asia as a result of this enormous tsunami that came ashore in that part of the world. That tsunami had a cause. It was an effect that was caused by something. Well, the cause was a big earthquake in the ocean, under the ocean, in the earth under the ocean. And that big jolt, that earthquake, caused the tsunami to rise. So the earthquake was the cause, the tsunami was the effect. But what caused the earthquake? So when I say daisy chain our way back, the cause of the tsunami was the earthquake, but the earthquake is an effect of some previous cause. And that would be the pressures that the surface of the earth are experiencing as a result of gravitation, the moon going around the earth going around the sun, these gravitational forces are so significant that we recently found out with that flyby of Pluto. You imagine we built we built a ship and loaded a camera on it and flew it by Pluto. And we thought it would just be a dead rock like the moon. Instead, it's got volcanoes on it. It's active. It's generating heat. Way way the hell out there. Surprise, surprise. So the center of our Earth planet is a molten core. It's very, very hot. And you might think that it would cool off and run out of steam eventually, and it would if it were not for these tidal forces, these gravitational forces that lead to continental drift and earthquakes. Those of us in California know earthquakes well. So the earthquake was these forces were the cause of the earthquake. The earthquake was an effect of these gravitational forces, but it was the cause of the tsunami, which was an effect. And you can do this with anything in life. You can daisy chain your way back. Cause, effect, cause, effect. Karma's the same thing. And the word means action. Karma means action, but it describes both ends of the action, the cause and the effect, the stimulus and the response. Right? Karma describes, how else can I say that? The cause and the effect. You can't do anything without it having an effect on everything. There is, I forget who brought this up initially, but it's for a couple of decades now, it's been called the butterfly effect. This idea that a butterfly could flap its wings in China, and the result is a tornado in Kansas. And people go, well, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. What are you talking about? How could a butterfly in China trigger a tornado in Kansas? Well, it's not that it happens directly. Like, if the butterfly didn't exist, then that tornado wouldn't be. It's just that everything touches everything. Everything is part of everything. So, as remote as this connection may seem, this particular cause and effect, it's still, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a signal. It's an indication of a contributing factor or an influence. So, while that tornado in Kansas was influenced to some extent by the butterfly in China, there were thousands of other factors that contributed to it as well. But the weather rises and falls, doesn't it? It comes and goes. A high pressure area rolls in, spinning in one direction, and you have nice weather for a while, but it's going to be followed by low pressure. Sometimes it's real slow and the weather will get stagnant and not change for a while, but sooner or later, the yin and the yang of it, there's going to be a low pressure area that comes in and maybe brings cloudy skies or maybe some rain. And that'll be followed by a high pressure area. Sunny days will return. The barometer rises on a nice day and then it falls. And everything cycles. Cause and effect, stimulus, response, round and around. There's nothing that we do that doesn't affect everything else. That's the bottom line. And karma is not limited to action. It's not just the physical behavior or the action, the work that we do in the world. parking the car on the street instead of in the garage, and then somebody plows into your car and wrecks it, and you say, oh, only I'd put it in the garage. Uh, I guess it's my karma. There's some reason that happened. It's a consequence or a result of things in my life, as simple and mundane as it may seem to be. But karma is not limited to the action that we take, which causes an effect or stimulates a response. It's our speech, and it's not just our behavior and our speech. It's our thoughts and feelings that behave according to the principle or the law of karma. Our thoughts and our speech, as well as our behavior and our actions, generate a particular karmic outcome or effect. And it's not just our actions and behavior, our thoughts and feelings that generate karma. I think most importantly, we need to recognize that intention is at the source of all of this. Intention is such an important concept and so commonly overlooked. If we feel guilty or ashamed of something that we've done, and I've had many instances where private clients have come to me tormented by something that they've done. They have a guilty conscience. They're ashamed of themselves, maybe even humiliated, self-humiliated by what they did, and just filled with regret. And one of the things that I would say to them routinely, at some point anyway, is, well, are you the person that did that horrible, shameful, regrettable thing? Or are you the person that now feels badly about it and wishes you hadn't done it? And if so, you could learn from it and vow not to make that mistake again. And that offers most people a lot of relief. It's like, yeah, why am I identifying with the bad guy? Oh, I know. It's because my parents told me I was bad over and over, and the church told me I was bad over and over, and politicians scare me, and advertisers scare me, and they all tell me that, what did Mick Jagger say? My shirts are not white enough. Can't get no satisfaction. Oh, we've been inundated with you're bad, you're weak, you're wrong, you're stupid. So we latch on to that identity. I did this bad, regrettable, horrible. I'm so ashamed of myself. Hey, the fact that you feel bad about it, that you wouldn't do it again, means that's who you are. Identify with the remorse and with the awareness that you've learned, or you could learn, or you're in the process of learning. And so that speaks to the whole idea of intention. Can you change your intention? That's really a fundamental level. Like, yeah, I see that I hurt that person by saying what I said the way I said it. Was it your intention to hurt them? No, 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 it didn't. Well, then let yourself off the hook. Because ultimately, karma is generated by your intention more than by the thought or the feeling or the speech or the behavior. It's the intention that reveals who you are and generates the karma, the results, the life that you will live 2 minutes from now, 2 years from now, a couple of lifetimes from now. Right? I think that's real important. You're not the person that made the mistake. If you look at your intention and say, yeah, well, that was a mistake. I wish I hadn't said it that way. Maybe, if I'd just taken a few slow, deep breaths and allowed myself to cool off, I wouldn't have been so reflexive and might not have reacted in such a regrettable way. Or maybe you didn't say anything. You just carried the hurt and the heartache and tormented yourself for hours or days or weeks on end over these feelings you can't seem to put down because you just feel so bad. Badly. What's your intention? Ask yourself, but what was my intention? And then you can do that with other people, see? You're so angry at Joe or Sally because they did this insensitive thing and they said this horrible thing to you. And how could they be so cruel? How could they talk to you in such a mean way? Why don't they get it together? Why would they direct all that hostility and nastiness at me? Just because I was there and had something to do with it, I didn't deserve to be talked to that way. Well, as you get better at taking responsibility for your own intentions, then you can ask yourself about other people and their intention. What was their intention? You can ask if you have that kind of relationship and if they're aware enough to have any idea what you're talking about. What was your intention? Did you intend to, well, actually stop there. Did you intend to, that's sort of argumentative. Just what was your intention? Why? Why did you say that? Um, and it's easier to forgive someone that says, look, I didn't intend to upset you or frustrate you or hurt you or put you in your place or explain to you the error of your ways, why you're so stupid and irritating me. No, that was not my intention. We can take this a little further. I won't, but there is such a thing as an unconscious intention, you know, like somebody deeply steeped in psychology would say, well, consciously they did not intend to do something, but unconsciously, yes, that was their intention. We'll leave that for now. It's just, if you look at your own intention and understanding and even forgiving yourself, letting go of the hurt, that's what forgiveness is, just putting it down. It's something you do for yourself. Even forgiving others is really a gift to yourself. It just means I'm putting the hurt down. I'm not going to I'm not going to drag this around forever and a day. And when we do, we have to ask ourselves, why am I still carrying this around? And of course, it's because there's lessons embedded in it. There's an opportunity to learn embedded within it something really wonderful about yourself. So, as we get better at looking at the roots of karma, the cycle of cause and effect, in the intention behind the thought, the feeling, the speech, the behavior, it's easier to do that with other people and look at other people with compassion for their suffering. And then they don't run you. It's not easy to do, to look at someone who is trying to frighten you, trying to manipulate you, trying to hurt you. And recognize that they do that because they suffer. Someone who's trying to frighten you, not in all cases, sometimes this is studied, like marketing and advertising. That is a well studied use of fear. Um, to manipulate you to buy something you probably didn't know you wanted and could do without, that you don't really need. But we get afraid somehow. So that's deliberate, that's purposeful, that's well studied. Um, But that's not always the case. Quite often, people are not aware or fully conscious of the reason why they are frightening you, why they are trying to frighten you, why they are using fear. But to recognize that the people that are trying to frighten us are frightened. The people that are trying to dumb us down with fear and make us less aware are coming out of a place of very low awareness. Misery loves company, stupid loves stupid. Unconscious embraces unconscious, right? At least we all agree. So a lot of forgiveness comes from compassion and recognizing the suffering in the people that hurt you the most. Intention. I think that's where we need to begin our understanding of karma. That the idea that everything touches everything is a part of everything, and that everything you do is karmic. Every condition you experience is karmic, and every action that you take generates karma. And again, I understand the idea of good karma and bad karma, but just don't be locked into this idea that every incident is either good karma or bad karma. What about in between karma? what, what about an event or circumstance, a condition that rises up that has both a reward and a heartache enfolded within it? And maybe both are beneficial. See, when we say karma, it's all good. It's not really punishment and reward, it's opportunity to learn, because we're arguing here, or at least implying, that the purpose of life is to grow and evolve. And how else are we going to grow and evolve but to be presented with the consequences of our behavior? Again, speech, feeling, thought, and fundamentally intention. The consequences of our intentions. And if they're good, then, you enjoy that. And if they're bad, then you suffer that. But that has an overall benefit in it, that you're presented with the consequences. You're not punished by bad karma. You're shown that there's a better way to do this. Now, there's a lot of examples. I want to go to the Q&A, and I hope you have some questions about karma and how it plays out in your life. In the moment, there's some, like instant karma. Everything is everything. Everything touches everything. We talked about immanent and transcendent last week. The idea that divinity or the Godhead or the source or the creator is in its creation, but the creation is in the Godhead. Immanent and transcendent, both things are true, that the one life is in every little apparently separated bit, all of which are in the one life. And that both things are true. That's panentheism. Well, somebody tripping on acid might say, everything is everything, man. That's their ultimate LSD revelation, realization. Everything is everything, man. Santana even did a song in the 60s, Everything is Everything. What does that mean? It means every seemingly separate thing actually touches on every seemingly separated thing. There is no disconnect, only an appearance. There is no separation. It's just one thing. So the butterfly effect and the tornado in Kansas is an extreme example of the fact that you can't do, say, think, feel in a way that doesn't affect everything around you. So let's take some ownership of that, some responsibility for that. A great deal of what happens to us in our life comes or seems to come at us from the surrounding conditions, but how much of it is made out of the way we view and respond to what comes at us? We don't tend to look at that side. Life is what you make it. No. Life is what's done to me. That's where most of us live. It happened to me. They did it to me. I'm upset because of this or that, this situation, this circumstance. It was done to me. Yeah, but isn't the bulk of it really in the way you look at it and the way you respond to it? And again, if you go to in your interpersonal relationships, look at your own intention and the way you initiate an action or respond to an action from a point of view of, well, what was my intention? Then it'll be a lot easier for you to do that with other people. So I want to go to the Q&A in a minute. Hopefully you'll have some questions or responses about this. I love the Q&A, and it's the only reason we do this live, so that we can get some response from you guys. So no bad questions. I hope you speak up. Just put a note in the chat box to Melinda that you have a question, or maybe type out in a very concise, brief form the nature of the question, and we'll do that in just a minute. Karma, the cycle, cause and effect. If we knew, as we become aware, that everything is karmic, then that's going to change us. That's going to make us much more responsible and allow us to recognize the working of karma in our lives. Very simply said, if you are generous in this life, you will be prosperous in the next. If you are cruel and miserly and hostile in this life, then the consequences in the next life will be such that you'll have to experience the consequences of that. You're going to have to recognize the cause-effect relationship even across lifetimes. But you don't have to think of, I think it's best if we don't think of karma only in terms of my next life. But how about the next minute or the next day? Make it much more personal. That funky mood you're in is your karma. The problem that you can't seem to solve, that is haunting you and following you around, is yours. You've conjured that up somehow. And it's for your benefit and in your interest. This is universally true. I don't mean you specifically. This is universally true. And as we aspire to be more ethical and more virtuous, I mean, what is spiritual growth? But an attempt to refine our animal nature to a spiritual nature, to be more virtuous, more loving, more kind, more inclusive, of better humor, appreciative of beauty and aesthetics, the qualities of love, so to speak. They are many. And to respond to negativity with positive, to answer a threat, not with another threat, but with something that de-escalates the situation, to make understanding far more important than being right. Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Can we give up the need to be right Is it really that important to be right at the end of the day? And to sacrifice understanding? Like by making the person who disagreed with you wrong, you failed to understand why they felt that way. Yeah, but they're wrong, Michael. And I know they're wrong because it contradicted me, and I've got to be right. I can't be wrong. I'm telling you the truth. This is the way it is in my world, and that's different. So it's not right. It must be wrong. I feel a conflict. Well, put all of that right and wrong judgment down and instead seek to understand. That's huge. Make that our intention. I intend to understand you. I may never reconcile this conflict in our relationship. I'm going to do my best to form the intention and carry through on my intention to understand what you understanding. I mean, what else is there but understanding? This is spiritual growth, to understand. It's personal growth, understanding. It's a synonym for consciousness, for being aware. What else do we call that mind that is conscious, that is aware, that is sentient? What is that process but understanding? Not simply gathering knowledge, but understanding. I have a hierarchy in my book, Fearless Intelligence, on the evolution of understanding. It's not mine. I borrowed it from the business world. It's a kind of a hierarchy or a pyramid. At the base is the collection of data. And that's sort of like words. And above that is information. That's sort of like phrases and sentences. And above that is knowledge. And that's where we put the sentences together as paragraphs, chapters. Data, building understanding. Data, information, that is telling us something now. Knowledge, data, information, knowledge, and the capstone is wisdom. DIKW is what I call it in my book, the DIKW hierarchy, an evolution of understanding. I understand this data, not very well, it's just data, it's just numbers, it's like those fields you fill in a form. But having filled out the whole form or read the whole form that somebody else filled out, now I have some information on you. And if that process continues, eventually it develops to knowledge. But as Einstein said, I think this is a great quote, any fool can know things. The secret is to understand them. So understanding is superior to knowledge. Understanding, again, runs the gamut. May not understand much, now I understand a little more. What is the evolution of consciousness or higher consciousness or expanded awareness? But to experience more and understand it, to put it together, to see the connections and the principle of karma, of cause and effect, and its cyclic nature that includes all things at all times, is central to that understanding. And again, the idea of intention, of karma coming more from intention than anything that results after that. That should help you forgive yourself and to be more compassionate and forgiving with other people. And that's the process. Onward and upward we go. All right, it's about 10 after. Melinda, do we have any questions or comments? Anybody in the chat box?
You do. I'm going to go to Kasha in just a minute. I wanted to thank you for mentioning 9/11 the way you did and the Queen's passing the way you did in a very just a meaningful way for me that there's just those are big events, especially 9/11, and uh, I just appreciate it. I appreciated the meditation and the talk. And one thing that maybe you could go into a little bit after the questions later is the moral judgment. Wikipedia actually talks about karma as within a moral judgment phase, and the idea that people that succeed, that's the direct, what I'm trying to say, the prosperity gospel, the untouchables, and the untouchable caste in India, that these are all things these people have accrued through their actions. It gets pretty muddied in my mind. But first I want to go to Kasha, and then if you want to, you can throw that around.
Well, let me make a brief comment about that. Um, what that triggers for me is the futility of judging other people as a way to understand yourself or your life. We are not, I don't want to say we're not other people. I keep emphasizing, the universe is one thing. So, in a sense, everything touches everything, everything's connected. But part of the paradox of the one in the many is in form, there's a great forgetting. And we incarnate as these not just separate, distinct, diverse individuals, but absolutely unique. And we've talked about that paradox. We'll talk more about the paradox. But the idea in that equation is to know thyself. We've never heard any great platitude, Greek or otherwise, know other people for the wisdom to understand others. Just all of that is judgment. You're not going to understand karma by looking at another person's situation. And again, this idea of good karma and bad karma. Ask someone who has a child with special needs. Because I've counseled a few, and the torment of, what did I do to cause this? Why have I been burdened with this special needs child? Where's the justice in that? And then as the child grows, they begin to realize that while it has special needs, and may always be dependent or reliant on others, that it also has qualities of love that might not be available in any other setting or situation, of qualities of great heights of love and bliss that you see in this child, or maybe I'm thinking of these savants, these autistic savants who, well, the extreme was Rain Man. Remember Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man? He couldn't manage to tie his shoes. That was a challenge. He couldn't even tie his shoes, but he had this incredible brain for facts and numbers and figures and statistics. And this is not uncommon to see that people seem to be not supposed to use the word handicapped, but just for the sake of convention, not so talented in one area. And we think of them as special needs because they can't really care for themselves the way most of us are able. And yet, in these other areas, they have these incredible talents or these abilities, like maybe to play the piano like nobody else. See a 4-year-old playing this classical music, and they don't even read music; they just sat down at the piano. You have to start thinking about previous lives then too. So anyway, yeah, let's go to Kasha. But it just a lot of that can be sidestepped if we just stop judging other people, whether we're trying to understand their karma or not. And the caste system, that's another whole thing. I don't even care to get into that at this point. But thanks for bringing that up. Thank you, Mindy. And Kasha, what's your question or comment today?
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, there you go. Hi,
Um,
Kasha.
when you spoke of intention and the role of intention in behavior towards others, I couldn't help thinking of the old saying that I'm sure you could think of it even before I say it, that the road to hell is paved with good intention. Now, the thing about aphorisms and sayings is that they could be interpreted in two different and sometimes contradictory ways. Um, so I just wondered what your take on that old saying is. And I have my own experience with a person who has expressed that to me, and he was hurt by something that I did. And again, we could discuss how much of that has to do with him thinking that what happened was something that was done unto him, and he was um, playing this victim status, or how much of it, had to do with it really doesn't matter what you intend to do. If what you do is hurtful, then that's what counts. So
Yeah.
I was curious.
Well, I suppose there are situations where we talk to people in ways that we know will be hurtful and really couldn't deny it. But I think more often than not, when we hurt someone or someone is angry at us because we said something that insulted them or hurt them, more often than not, I think, knowing, generalizing about people, it's not our intention. You've got to be really cruel to bear down on somebody and torment them and torture. It's all about control, isn't it? It's a game of trying to control other people because you haven't discovered the ability to control yourself. But it's such a great question, Kasha. I just flat out disagree with the statement that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What that means to me, anyway, is to hell with your intention. I'm not interested in your measly, uh, your silly uh, attempt to rationalize what you did and justify it by this subtlety of intention. I'm a victim, and I'm gonna of what you did, and I'm gonna play it for. I see power over you in me claiming my victimness and tormenting you and torturing you in kind, because I don't really believe in karma or that the universe will handle this. It's my job to punish you in kind. What's the other phrase? I'm not going to let them get away with it. Isn't that curious? That we're motivated by a belief that the universe is not just and it's not fair. And my job is to be some sort of judge or inquisitor that makes sure you pay for your sins. And you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you to make sure you know how it feels. All of this is just business as usual nonsense. There's no growth in it. I just disagree with the premise. It's one of those aphorisms that I find little value in. I think the road that we could easily say the road to heaven is paved with good intentions. But when
Yeah,
we talk about karma, heaven and hell is in every minute. Heaven and hell are not destinations. If you are reborn as a golden retriever or a cockroach, or reborn as a demigod or a saint, you don't go someplace to do that. Those are conditions that rise around you. Your incarnation as Kasha and mine as Michael are conditions that our karma has generated. Not because God made the decision, obviously. It's not that. It's just law at work that these conditions arise, very much like the weather or like the waves or the clouds. So that's my best response to that, Kasha.
yeah. Very quickly, I completely agree with you. Um, when that happened, and I'm leaving out a lot of details about the circumstances where that conclusion was drawn by my younger brother, who expected approval, who had pedestalized me, who wanted me to be in sync with him, and my disagreement ended up hurting him because he expected something different. So I can't go into that here, um, but I completely agree with you. When something happens that we do something that results in hurting someone, I do not deny the fact that the person has felt hurt, but I would like to sit with him and in an honest and equitable way, sincere way, see how much each of us had a part in it, and why was he so susceptible, vulnerable. I mean, um, the old saying that you've also quoted, Eleanor Roosevelt, that nobody can make you feel, without your consent, make you feel disrespected or hurt,
I
or
think she said, yeah.
yeah. So that. But anyways, I I'm happy and comforted that you agree with what I felt about that aphorism, and I wanted to run that by you because it gets, like so many other aphorisms, gets thrown around in order to justify somebody's stand without really delving deeper into the meaning and the ramifications of what the content and the meaning of that aphorism is. So thank you, and thanks to everyone who listened to me.
Thank you, Kasha. Um, Again, this idea of the either or, the binary, you did this to me, you caused it, I'm the effect, and that's the end of it. It's all out of the binary of thinking and separation. Nothing happens that doesn't involve everyone that's experiencing it to some relative degree. So you hurt me. Both people are involved in it. It may seem one way, especially to the person who was hurt. Like, you did this to me. You eviscerated me. It's a knife in my heart. You stabbed me in the you stabbed me in the back. Really? Well, there's two parts to that at the very least. What was done and how it was received, and both are contributing. But anybody else that is in the vicinity is contributing if they're involved in that. There just is no separation. And to cultivate relationships with people who understand that, or to help take people with whom you have relationships to that place of considering that maybe a 90-10 mix, maybe 99-1, more likely a 60-40 or a 30-70. It's both people are participating in the hurting and the being hurt, in the insulting and the being insulted. Um, Somebody will take just the most minor comment that obviously was not intended to hurt and make a big dramatic deal out of it, and then they run with it for all the mileage they can get, and they work it. They work that program, they milk that, they bring it up a day later, they bring it up a year later. 10 years later, they're still bringing it up. That time that proved that you are, it's just nonsense. The only thing that's happening is right here, right now. That past does not exist. It's just images in the brain. The future does not exist. So why carry all that stuff around? Thank you, Kasha.
Anne has
Thank you,
a
Michael.
question.
Who else do we have, Mindy?
Anne's got something to ask.
Hello, Michael. My question is regarding a statement that you just made about incarnating into a specific situation or whatever. And my question is regarding the current socio-political situation and what we are recognizing or it's being labeled as white privilege. And it's one of those things that like you can't deny it exists, but then in the meantime, how do I go about understanding or empathizing better with it without trying to take on the guilt? Because it's almost like my position is I didn't ask to be born this way, or did I? I mean, how do you deal with that? That question makes sense.
Yeah. I think not only does it make sense, I think it is a motivating factor in a lot of politics. Um, when you talk about so-called white privilege as an example of the way karma plays out socially, politically, economically, and in all other ways, um, critical race theory, the objection to so-called CRT is curious because those who are objecting to it most vocally are those who know the least about it. CRT is not being taught in K through 12th grade. It's not even being taught to undergrads. CRT is like a grad school concept for educators and academicians about how to better balance our education. And the fact is, if we tell the truth about American history, it's going to make people uncomfortable. But not telling the truth about American history, whitewashing, the genocide of indigenous people, uh, the unspeakable slavery and bondage of human beings, and the racism that comes out of that, which is necessary to insulate racists from the horror of what they've done. The only way you can deal with the fact that you owned people, you bought and sold them, you split up their families and sold their children for money, and then used them for free labor and built a great nation on the backs of people that were forced to work for free. And then it goes on, portrayed them as happy and like little children, and the oppressor is just really a good parent and taking care of them. The whole thing is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable when it's ignored. It's uncomfortable when it's addressed, but it has to be addressed. And I think Germany is a good example of a nation that went back and looked at what happened in the 30s and the 40s, the rise of nationalism. And of course, that nationalism very much connected to racism and the white supremacy, the white power of fascism, Russia's role in the world as the world's largest fascist power. That's an all-white nation. Um, it's got to be addressed. And we have to deal, if we end up feeling some sort of guilt or shame, like, did I ask to be white? And if so, for what reasons? Did I choose to be a white person with opportunity and affluence so that I could have power and control over other people? Or so that I could deal with the difficulty? I don't know that we can break it down on such a granular level. Maybe it's enough in that we are what we are. We are who we are. You know, people are having a problem now even figuring out what gender they are because the society is saying there's a lot of people that feel like they're in the wrong body, and we should have respect for their feelings. So now gender is a fluid thing, and I had a client the other day that said that they were moving out of California because of the unisex bathrooms. And This woman was saying she just does not feel comfortable going into a restroom, in a public restroom where there are urinals and men walking in and out. And I said, where are you going to go where that's not the case? It's going to be everywhere eventually. You're going to have to get used to it. So we're going to have to get used to being people of privilege or affluent. Or I don't know that there's any value in wringing our hands over whether we chose this or not. I'm not sure chose is actually the right word, because how could we know all the variables at any level of consciousness? It's like saying I'm going to drive from LA to New York and I'm going to choose the route, and therefore I'm going to choose the vista, I'm going to choose the views, I'm going to choose everything that I experience along the way. Well, no, you're not. To some extent, you're able to do that, but mostly it's just going to happen to you. And the fact that each of us is incarnated in a male or a female body in a particular skin suit of this color or that color, with a language or a predilection or disposition for, you like art, I like music. This guy here is just a sports freak. It is what it is, and you're going to have a broad experience. You're going to experience everything um, in one life or another. So, and I don't know that there's much merit in going down that road of why did I choose it. I don't know that it was chosen so much as it just rose up according to the principles of karma, just like the weather. You can't choose the weather. You know. Does that help, Anne? You get a response to that?
It did help. So I guess maybe what I'm looking for, so if I am confronted with an attitude or a conversation or something that's trying to make me assume guilt, I don't really need to. What I need to do is just be sympathetic, empathetic, understanding of the situation, and just try to remain at peace and try to get any other party involved in that conversation to that same place, just understanding it's that we're both coming from a position of mutual understanding and mutual respect for each other. And
Yes,
so that-
yes,
okay,
yes. What wonderful words. Understanding and respect. Exactly.
thank you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, well, look at the power. Feel the power in that. It's like part concession. It's like I am that which understands. I have a capability of understanding. Look, I'm not denying. Uh, Here are areas that I don't understand, but my intention, there it is again, the word intention. My intention is to understand you. And even to understand if you blame me as a representative of a particular race or a gender or ethnicity or whatever, I'm willing to tolerate that. I don't know that, speaking for myself, I don't know that Michael Benner is a very good representative of anything. Being male, being white, being of Irish German heritage, being a survivor of Catholicism, I don't know that I represent any of those things, right? But that's excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's very good. It's tough. It's tough. It's like, wait a minute, I never owned a slave. But I sympathize. I understand. Holy cow. Uh, this is why integration, this has been in our lifetime, not since the 60s, 50s, and 60s, have we really deliberately worked toward integration, because racism is rooted in ignorance. And so segregation supports that, prolongs that ignorance. And that's where the life comes from for racism to continue to be handed down generation after generation. if we can get these people in the flyover states where racism is most strong, if there was a way that they could meet people that were different from them, that were different skin color, different religions, different who ate different foods, who danced in different ways, who had different belief systems and different values, then everybody could relax a little bit. And so the understanding is the antidote to ignorance. And that's how love drives out evil and fear. By in the same way, understanding drives out ignorance. That's exactly, love is understanding, right? Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for today. Melinda, is there anything outstanding that needs our attention before we close?
No more questions. I thought that was well said, especially when you talked about not denying that was a great question from Anne. And my take on it is that people's denial of the reality of the events is something that we can all really take a look at and try not to be pushing uncomfortable things away.
We shouldn't be denying anything. That's so personally defensive,
Mm-hmm.
But skin color, it's just so bizarre that
Mm-hmm.
skin color would be used as a
Cudgel.
well, that too, but as a indication of character.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so ridiculous on the surface. And again, only if white people who have no black friends get to know black people, for example, or it could be as the Chinese get to know the Japanese, or the Indonesians get to know the Cambodians, or whatever, whatever the arena. Only as we interface and get to know each other, it would also help if we reminded ourselves that we all come from a tribe of 200,000 people in West Africa. We're all Africans, ultimately. It's just white people went north and lost the melanin, that's all. Being white is a melanin shortage. It's a deprivation of color. So there's white people and then the people of color. I've talked to, I'm going to close, but I've talked to a couple of black women recently in the last year who were active in eliminating racism through education. And when I asked them about white superiority and the suppressive nature of white colonizers, the death of the Queen has brought up this whole thing about colonization and the horrors of colonization and hegemony and imperialism and all of that. It's like, why the white people? Why are the white people, by and large, not exclusively, but why are they the oppressors? And both of these women said they thought that it had to do with the harsh climates of the northern areas where white people migrated and lost their coloration. And while people of color were often in the tropics and food's just falling off the trees, the Aryan race, so-called, the Caucasians, are up north, where you have maybe a 90-day or 120-day growing season, and that's it. And it's freezing in the winter, and there's nothing to eat, and the trees are bare, and you can only survive by hunting and killing. And perhaps they were suggesting that accounts for a tendency toward hostility and violence and a whole different worldview than somebody who's still living in paradise, with fruit just falling out of the trees and springing up out of the ground, and a great deal of. It's a gross oversimplification, but it's still a curious thread, something that an anthropologist would want to look at. Thank you, people. That's all the time we have. Actually, we've gone over a bit. So.
Hey, Melinda.
Yeah.
Check out the 9/11 boat lift on YouTube if you haven't seen it already.
Okay, thank you.
9/11 boat lift.
I shall. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jimmy. Aloha.
Aloha.
So we're going to ease on down the road here. Hope you guys can join us next week. We'll be here, of course, next week. And not sure the topic yet. I've got some ideas about where to go at this point, but I did want to. Karma is so fundamental, and so I did want to dedicate a class to it today. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll make it a point to join us next Sunday live if possible. Remember, this is podcast and also posted on YouTube as Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. If you'll unmute and say farewell, so long to everybody, I'd appreciate that.
Thank
Salam,
you.
namaste, aloha.
Thank you so
to each
much.
of you.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Michael.